If you control sugar, you control everything. I'm not just talking about sugar in your pantry. I'm talking about learning to control sugar inside your body. I'm telling you, you understand carbohydrates, you understand the root of everything that makes you fat and everything that makes you lean. And all has to do with insulin. What's going on, sixpackabs.com? It's Thomas Delauer, and today I am breaking down 3 surefire ways that you can control your sugar cravings. But before we do that, I have to help you understand exactly what's happening in your body when it comes down to excess carb consumption and sugar consumption, and how that truly turns to fat, and how insulin plays a big role in whether or not you crave sugar in the future. You see, when you consume carbohydrates, you start storing them in your liver and in your muscles. A lot of us know that. It's known as liver glycogen or muscle glycogen. But what a lot of us don't always realize is once the liver is full, it's full of carbohydrates, well, those carbohydrates spill over into the bloodstream. These excess carbohydrates end up going through something known as de novo lipogenesis. I've talked about that in other videos, so I'm not going to go into significant detail in this video, but de novo lipogenesis is the conversion of carbohydrates into fat. Now, this whole process has to do with insulin. So let's say you start consuming some carbohydrates. Well, the first thing that happens is insulin is secreted. Insulin is secreted to help those carbohydrates get into storage. But 2 very critical things happen when you have an insulin spike. For one, it stops the fat burning process in the first place. Your body's utilizing fatty acids, it's going through the motions, it's burning fat, you're getting leaner, everything is great. Then you consume carbohydrates and your body says, okay, I need to utilize these carbs as fast as possible. So the insulin goes ahead and tells your body to start utilizing them. But then another thing happens after that. The excess carbohydrates that you didn't use for energy immediately end up getting stored as fat. That's pretty common knowledge, but what happens next is what's really interesting. You see, the response between your brain and insulin is a little bit slow. So even when your blood sugar starts to drop a little bit, or even when you start to utilize carbs, your brain takes a little while to receive the message from the insulin, which means that your blood sugar is still going to continue to drop a little bit, meaning you're going to start craving sugar very, very fast. So in essence, the more carbohydrates that you have, the more that you're going to crave them in the very near future. Now, this cascades into even another problem. When your appetite goes up, your body signals the release of cortisol. And now we're getting into the territory that a lot of us understand. Cortisol is, generally speaking, pretty bad when it comes to fat accumulation. So if you're hungry and your body's secreting cortisol, well, then that cortisol is telling your body to store fat, but it's also doing something else. You see, that cortisol alone is going to help release carbohydrates that are already stored in your body and put them into the bloodstream. See, it's one of those things that people don't think about with cortisol. Cortisol's job is to help get your blood sugar up when necessary. So if it notices that your blood sugar is low, it means that it's going to signal the release of carbs from inside the body to get that blood sugar up. Well, thus begins the whole cycle all over again. Blood sugar goes up, then it starts to crash, and you crave sugars again. So how do we stop this process? So here are 3 surefire ways to cut those sugar cravings by at least a quarter. So let's get right to it. The first one is cinnamon in your water. You don't need much. You need maybe a teaspoon, maybe 2 teaspoons throughout the course of the day. But doing that with your morning beverage or with your morning meal, and then again with your evening meal, can make a very significant difference. There's one study in particular that was really, really intriguing. And this is one of the main flagship studies by the American Diabetic Association. What they looked at was diabetic patients that consumed 1 to 6 grams of cinnamon throughout the course of the day over a period of 4 to 6 weeks. Well, what they ended up finding was that those that did consume cinnamon had an 18 to 29% reduction in blood sugar. Blood sugar and insulin work together. Remember that. So the more blood sugar that we have, the more that we typically need insulin, which therefore is going to send us into that vicious circle again. Now, you don't really need that much cinnamon, like I said. It's just a tiny bit. And remember, when you're having your cinnamon with a meal, you have to consume it with some water so that you can actually absorb it through the small intestine better. But there's another factor that cinnamon plays when it comes down to sugar cravings, and it has to do with something known as candida. I don't know if you've heard of candida before, but you may or may not be suffering from it, not even know it. You see, candida is an upper GI yeast infection. Yes, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, a yeast infection can occur, especially in the gastrointestinal tract. And this candida yeast feeds off of sugar. So what ends up happening is every time you consume sugar, you're feeding not only yourself, but you're having to feed this yeast. This yeast consumes the sugar, and then it gets hungry. And when it gets hungry, it asks your brain to get more sugar. So thus begins the vicious circle again. But now you have it happening on two levels. You have it happening with your body and your own natural insulin response, but you're also doing it for this nice little fungus that's living inside your gut. The power behind this antifungal that's contained in cinnamon is known as O-methoxycinnamaldehyde. Another mouthful to say, but it's a powerful antifungal that has many, many properties in the body, but staving off yeast is probably one of the main ones. All right, now let's roll into the next thing that you can do. Very, very simple, adding a little bit more protein to your morning meal. At the University of Maryland, they found that those that consumed a little bit more protein with their breakfast on an MRI scan had significantly less brain activity in the hunger areas of their brain. What this indicated is that if you're consuming a bit more protein in the morning, you are much less likely to have a bigger appetite throughout the course of the day. Now, it doesn't have to do with just the protein being satiating. It actually has to do with hormones. You see, protein is going to decrease the amount of ghrelin. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone. It signals us to actually be hungry and want to eat. And it's going to increase the presence of PYY, which is a hormone that signals the brain to just chill out and have you not be hungry. Okay, the third thing that you can do is megadose some vitamin C. When I say megadose, I can't tell you exactly how much, but I can certainly tell you it's more than what is listed on the label. I'm not a doctor, so I can't go into exquisite detail there, but vitamin C has some pretty powerful components when it comes down to antioxidant activity within the body. And what that's going to do is particularly work with insulin and the brain. When you consume carbohydrates, you want them to get into the brain properly. When the carbohydrates can get into the brain properly, it starts this cycle with tryptophan and serotonin. And when you start producing serotonin, you have a sense of well-being that definitely curbs some cravings. So it's very simple there. By having vitamin C with just about every meal, if you're someone that's battling sugar cravings, you can have a big impact on whether you want carbs with the next meal or not. Now, lastly, I do want to throw in one little witch doctor thing. This wasn't what I planned to put in here originally, but I found it. I thought it was pretty darn intriguing. And that's to simply make every meal a blue plate special. Yep, I'm going to get to it in a second, but you can take this or leave this. You can think I'm crazy or not crazy, but the fact is the research backs it up. If you eat your food on a blue plate, chances are you won't eat as much. Literally, you won't eat as much by 10 to 25%. That's pretty significant. It has to do with the fact that blue is a natural appetite suppressant. So I'm going to go and paint everything blue in my house, and then I'll never have to eat. No. But in reality, if you actually put your food on a red plate or a yellow plate, studies show that you'll probably eat more. You see, we don't have a whole lot of naturally blue foods out in the world. We have blueberries and maybe one or two other things, but generally blue things aren't that edible. So we sort of have a natural aversion to them. We don't generally want to eat them. But anyway, that's just a bonus tip. As always, make sure that you're keeping it locked in here with sixpackabs.com. And as always, make sure you comment and let us know what videos you want to see and if you have any questions on the topic. So keep it locked in here, and I will see you in the next video.